Talk to me about the situation in Ukraine and notably Kyiv that Sir Keir Starmer's gone and found himself in.
Yes. Good morning, Gareth. If it wasn't for Keir Starmer going, I'm not sure we'd be talking about Kiev, we'd be talking about Iran, because the fact is the war in Ukraine has been grinding on, even though we've been somewhat distracted by Iran. Ballistic missile attacks last night, 8 missiles, several waves of Shahed drones against the capital. Over the last 2 days, Russian attacks have been pretty significant. We're seeing some footage of some of the clean-up, 16 people killed across the country over the last couple of days. It does appear 3 priorities for Russia at the moment. Obviously, they've been targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Why is that? It's the middle of the summer. Why does it matter? Defence industrial base. Ukraine is now being asked or being invited under licence to produce a lot of its own weapons. Therefore, you need energy. That's why Russia's striking them. They've also been targeting the ports at Odessa particularly. That's because, obviously, the Ukrainian export of grain, that raises some revenue, although the harsh reality is most of the revenue now comes from international aid. And the front line, Kostiantynivka, which is one of the big cities on the sort of fortress cities to the Donbass. The Russians are making very slow progress there, grinding war of attrition, but they clearly are focused on trying to break through that over the next year or two.
You say about the situation in Iran, just seeing actually Kuwaiti army saying it's confronting Iranian drones, according to the Reuters news agency. So whilst this is ongoing, that still is ongoing and taking up a lot of focus of attention. But politically in Ukraine, there's change at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be interesting that, again, Sir Keir Starmer, Mykhailo Fedorov, who is this chap here, he's a very popular individual, has been the defence minister. He's just been sacked by President Zelenskyy after 6 months in the post. It's not unusual for people to get reshuffled. I mean, he used to be the deputy prime minister. He's had a lot of roles. He's an innovator. He's been credited with things like the Starlink system, which was originally available for the Russians as well. He's been helped actually stop the Russians getting access to it. Doesn't sound like much, but that helps with targeting information and all sorts of stuff. He's also been very much a focus on trying to target Russian logistics, the way away from the front line, which is much more aligned to the Western thinking about how you conduct warfare. And he's also been trying to get involved in military reform, and therefore he is quite popular. There have been some protests in Kyiv, but they've been relatively low-key. I think what's interesting behind the headlines, though, is President Zelenskyy on Wednesday. There was a meeting between Zelenskyy, Fedorov, and also Siersky, who's the sort of gnarly old general who's actually in charge of the military forces. And it's pretty clear that the young innovator and the gnarly old general, there's clearly some friction there. And as a result, President Zelensky's had to solve this one by a reshuffle. But it's a really, throughout history, you get some old generals who are very set in their ways about how battles should be fought. But actually, if they end up with a war of attrition against Russia, that's where Ukraine will lose. And you do need an element of innovation. That's where I think Fedorov's legacy will be very powerful.
We saw some of the images of those protesters. We can actually take a listen to what they have to say.
Let's just say, I was deeply outraged by the situation surrounding Fedorov's resignation. I have to say, I'm not deeply invested in the internal political debates, but this is a person who shows results on the battlefield. We see results, we feel the fighting spirit and confidence in victory rising. And then, 6 months later, he is removed from office? Come on.
That's exactly the message I'm trying to send. Look at it from another perspective, because there are so many soldiers who are at their posts and carrying out their duties. They don't have the opportunity to come here today and oppose this shameful decision, which we've all come out against. That's why I'm standing here today, for them.
And Sean, in recent days, Zelensky's been talking about the fact that the battle is in the air for Ukraine. He said that at the NATO summit in Ankara in Turkey last week. But it's also true that the battle is taking place at sea as well, isn't it? Notably for logistics.
Yeah, I mean, the danger is the front line is obviously important in any battle, but actually logistics is where these wars are normally won or lost. I mean, the military quote is often that amateurs talk tactics, whereas professionals talk logistics. And when I was in the military, you're much more focused on the front line, tip of the sword stuff, but without the logistics, it just doesn't work. And that's why I say Russian attacking Odessa, not really working, but Ukraine's been working very hard at targeting Russian vessels in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. Literally, over the last 24 hours, they've struck struck 20 Russian ships there, all generally to do with the energy, oil and gas efforts by Russia. Obviously, that's where it generates a lot of its revenue. And since the start of the month, over 100 vessels in the Sea of Azov have actually been struck. So it's not an insignificant strike. And by all accounts, Russia's oil ability to refine oil has dropped to its lowest point in 21 years. So it is working. I think what's really interesting, it caught my eye this morning, though, was that Ukraine has been striking Russian energy infrastructure across the whole of Russia, thousands of miles behind the front line. How does Russia protect itself? Well, it's actually apparently looking at a modular system now. They're calling it Spider's Web, where they actually build this modular honeycomb sort of arrangement around some of its critical energy infrastructure, up to 25 metres tall. Apparently can withstand a 250 kilogram warhead going at it up to 250 kilometres an hour. It'd be really interesting to see how these things get built. The challenge is, I suspect it'll take months, if not years, to protect everything. Ukraine's rate of innovation, which is startling, literally every 24 hours they're bringing new stuff along. I'm not sure it'll take them too long to work out how to get through that.
Sean, good to see you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.